Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
And I'm going to start the share. And hopefully you'll get to see it in a moment. Yep. And the place we are in the story right now is that Joseph has been made viceroy of Egypt. And this is already the second time the brothers are coming down. Of course, we know they don't recognize him. He recognizes them. He insisted they bring Benjamin down with them. And in fact, they are now down with Benjamin. And right before we are picking up today, it says like Vayisa Enav, that he lifted up his eyes, Joseph lifted up his eyes, Vayar et Binyamin Achiv, and he saw Benjamin, his brother, Ben Imor, the son of his mother, of course, who is no longer living, right? She's passed away. Just to give you a little bit of hints as to the emotional place where he is. Vayomer hazeh achichem hakaton, and he said to them, is this your little brother, Asher amartem elai, that you talked to me about, that you referred to? Vayomer ale Elohim yochnecha b'ni, and he said, may God show grace to you, my son. So, and then it says, Vayimaher Yosef, and Joseph he kind of hurried, ki nichmaru rachanav, because he was moved to compassion, el achiv, regarding his brother. Remember, just the two of them left, and Rachel, of course, has passed on. And he sought to cry. Vayavoch hachadra, and so he went into his room. He went into the room, Vayev shama, and there he cried. He was so overcome with emotion. And there really is, when you think about it, there is so much emotion built up in the story. And when we get to the turning point of the story where Judah confronts him, I have to tell you, I cannot help but be moved. At any rate, this is where we're picking it up. Vayirchatz panav, he washed his face, Vayetzei, and he went out. Vayitapak, and he restrained himself, he took control over his emotions. Vayomer simu lachem, and he said, give them food, give food. So just want to make sure we are in the right place here. So there we go. Vayitapek, right? Nit ametz, he strengthened himself. Vahu lashon, it has the same meaning, right? It comes from the meaning. There's a quote in Job chapter 12, umeziach afikim, there's the afikim, Raphe, and he loosens the strong belts, or the belts of the strong. Yeah, afikim would be of strong people. He loosens their belts. And I think it comes to, there's a similar expression to gird your loins. In other words, the idea that God can take very mighty people and weaken them. And then another word, afike, I'm going to think this is meganim, the strong parts of the shields. And he says, chozek, strength. Vayasimu lo levado, and they placed the food, or they placed him, but lo means for him. So it means, I think, the food. They gave him food alone, v'lahem levadam, and them, the brothers, by themselves, ulemitzrim ha'ochlim ito, and the Egyptians who were eating with them, levadam, by themselves. Ki lo yuchlun hamitzrim, because the Egyptians are not able to eat et ha'ivrim lechem. They could not eat bread or food. Lechem, of course, literally means bread, but it has a broader meaning of food with the Hebrews. Hi to'eva hi lemitzrayim, because, and it says to'eva, and it's literally it sort of seems to suggest this is a disgusting thing for the Egyptians to do this. But we're going to see that the Onkelos gives us the exact reason, right? And so let's just do Rashi, and then if we need further explanation, we'll give it. Kito evahi, right? It is a disgusting thing. Davar sanui hu. It is something detestable. Mitzrim, for the Egyptians. Le'echol et ha'ivrim, to eat with the Hebrews. But Onkelos natan tam ladavar. And Onkelos gave a reason for this. So that the scriptural text doesn't explicitly state why, it just states it as a fact. But Onkelos is going to explain it. And here we go, right? Okay. Are be'ira de Mitzra'e, because the cattle of the Egyptians, tachalim le, right? That they worship, ivra'e ochlim, the Hebrews consume, they eat it. And in fact, there's a little allusion here to the Paschal Lamb and the fact of why they chose the Paschal Lamb as the symbol of freedom. So it's interesting, though. There's something to think about, right? Because even though the Hebrews were doing something that the Egyptians would absolutely detest, they nevertheless were sitting and eating a meal. Maybe not together in the sense that they were all sitting together, but they were willing to tolerate the beliefs of the Egyptians, were willing to tolerate the beliefs of the Hebrews here. And I think that's so interesting in this little allusion here about the religious tolerance, right? So going on. Vayeshvu lefanav, and they sat before him. Of course, we're talking about they sat before Joseph. Habachor kivchorato, the firstborn according to his being firstborn. V'hatzair kitzeirato, and the younger according to his youth. Vayitmahu, and they were amazed, right? Or they expressed amazement. You'll see why. Anashim, that is, the men expressed amazement. Ish el re'ehu, one to another, a man to his fellow. They were all blown away by how this was happening. Here we go. Abachor bechorato, the firstborn according to his position as firstborn. Makeh begvia, Joseph would smack the cup, smack his chalice. V'koreh Reuven, and he'd call out Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Uzvulun. Right? He'd mention these 6 sons. Bnei em echat, they are all sons of one mother. Hesevu keseder hazer. Sit yourselves around the table in this order. Shehu seder toldotechem, because that is the order of your birth. V'chein kulam, and likewise the rest as well. Kevan shehigia leVinyamin, and when he arrived at Benjamin, Amar, he said, Ze ein loem, he said, this one does not have a mother. Va'ani ein li ein, and I don't have a mother. Yeshev etzli, he should sit next to me. And what's happening here, this Rashi, is giving us a little bit of background regarding the cup, remember, that's going to come up and be put in the sack. And now we have a little bit of background as to the significance of it and why they were so easily framed when they found the sack with Benjamin's cup. There we go. Vayisam masot me'et panav, and he took portions from before him, alehem, to them. V'terev, he had them taken, right? He would divide up the food and have the portions taken to them. V'terev masa'at binyamin, and Benjamin's portion was larger mimasa'ot kulam, from the portions of all of them, chamesh yadot, by 5 times. Vayishtu, vayishkaru imor, and they ate, they drank. Yishkaru, maybe they became a little tipsy. imo, with him. So let's take a look at the Rashi, and then I want to comment on what's going on here in the course of the story, how the story is setting things up. Masot manot, portions. Chamesh yadot, 5 times. Chelko im echav, right? So he was given his portion with his brother. Umasa'at Yosef, and a portion from Joseph, the Osnat, his wife, Joseph's wife, Umenashe, Ephraim, and Moshe and Ephraim. They apparently would give him their portions as well, and that way he had 5 times the amount. Vayishkeru imo. So shikor, of course, means a drunkard, but I think what he's saying, you'll see. Let me let him say it. Umiyum shimnachruhu, and from the day when they had sold Joseph, they had sold him, lo shatu yain, they would not drink any wine, lo hu shata yain, and he didn't drink any wine either, to hayom shatu, and on that day they drank wine. That day they drank together. And maybe, if we're going to understand Vayishkeru could have something to do with the effect of the wine on them. Now, the fact that Benjamin gets a 5th portion is that what Joseph wants to do is he wants to test his brothers. He wants to see if, in fact, they really feel bad about what they did. And there's so much to human nature going on here, because you see people doing things that are clearly wrong, that it's so obvious that they've done something wrong, and yet they hold fast to it rather than admit that they were wrong, or rather than regret it to a point where they won't repeat the offense. And so Joseph wants to see if, in fact, the brothers, if he puts them in exactly the same situation as they were in when they sold him. In other words, he's setting up the possibility of jealousy of Benjamin. He wants to see now, because he knows that his father is going to now hold on to Benjamin for the same reasons. That is, of course, that Jacob was in love with Rachel, deeply in love, and she was no longer around. And of course, now Joseph wasn't around anymore, and so there'd only be Benjamin left. So Joseph is figuring that the brothers have full reason to be jealous now of Benjamin, and he's just, let's put it this way, he's putting gasoline on that fire now, and he's going to test them, and he's going to make it very easy for them to do the same thing again. That's exactly what he's doing. Because on the one hand, he's not going to simply take revenge. He actually wants to give them an opportunity to see if they have done tshuva. And by the way, this is such a major point as we come to the end of the book of Genesis, because we see from Cain and Abel on, and even Adam and Eve, in the fact that they were given one mitzvah and they couldn't even do that, right? And I think the Torah is telling us some very deep things about human nature, and also the possibility of hope. Let's keep going. Chapter 44. Vayitzav et asher al beito lemor, and he commanded the person in charge of his household with these words: Malay in amtachot ha'anashim ochel, fill the sacks of the people with food, ka'asher yuchlun seit, to the extent that they're able to carry these sacks. In other words, just fill them as much as possible. Remember, this is a repetition of what he had done before, right? And that's the part that he is going to make them feel sensitive, that they could be caught. This is the dine reference here, right? That they weren't really honest. It says, put the silver or the money of each person in the mouth of his sack. Let's see. Et Gvi'i, and my chalice. So this is that reference that Rashi had given us when he set them on their places right? And my chalice, Gvia HaKesef, the silver chalice, Tasim Befi Amtachat HaKaton. Place it at the mouth of the sack of the youngest one. The Kesef Shivro, and the money of his provisions. Vayas Kidvar Yosef Asher Diber, and he did exactly as Joseph had told him. Gvia. So Gvia is a little bit of an unusual word, and so Rashi, doesn't have it. We don't have translations here, so he wants to explain this word Gvia. Kos aroch. It's a long, elongated cup. The Korean law, and it's called in Old French, madrine. I don't know what the word is. Lauren, if you have something there that's helpful, that would be good. And
Yeah,
remer.
it says Maderine, like Madrine.
Yeah, I've never heard the word, but that's of
Yeah,
course
me
not
neither.
saying a lot necessarily. Yeah, let's just get that in here. I'll just put it in Madraine.
No, no, no. Maderine.
Okay, got it. Madarine. Okay. Rammer, I assume. I looked it up. I tried to find that word. I'm on the computer with the Yiddish dictionary there, but it didn't give me anything. I'm going to assume it refers to a chalice, something like that. Clearly, that's the context. Going on. Let's find it. Haboker, or morning lighted, right? There was morning light. Va'anashim shulchu, and the men were sent off. Hema v'chamorehem, they and their donkeys. Heim yatsu et ha'ir, they had gone out of the city, they'd exited the city. Lo hirchiku, they hadn't gotten very far. Yosef amar la'asher al beitor, and Joseph said to the one over his household, Kum, arise, reduf acharei ha'anashim, pursue after the people, the men. V'hisagtam, and when you reach them, v'amarta alehem, and say to them, Lama shilamtem ra'a tachat tova. Why did you pay bad for good? Why did you reward good with evil? Going on. Halo ze asher yishte adoni bo. In fact, that which my master drinks out of, v'hu nachesh yinachesh bo, and he divines with it. And of course, the divination was, of course, when he tapped on the cup and told them who to come and sit, how they were going to sit in order. Hare otem, you have done evil, asher asitim, that which you have done. Right? You have done something evil. So let's keep going. Vayasi game, and so in fact the one over his household reached them. Vaydaber alehim, and he spoke to them et advarim ha'ela, these exact words he said to them. So of course they would have been totally astonished, right? Why he would be accusing them, because this isn't what they had done at all, right? Vayomru elav, and they said to him, Lama yedaber Adoni, why does my master speak kidvarim ha'ela, these words? Chalila la'avadecha, God forbid for your servants, right? Far be it from your servants, may asot kadavar hazeh, to do something like this. But of course, with the incident of Dinah, they had they'd tricked, right, the people of Shem, and of course shown a certain attitude, and Joseph was testing them. And of course, he also would know they would be wondering about that. Onwards. Chalila la'avadecha. Heaven forbid for your servants. Kulin hu lanu. This is something, hulin meaning this is, a kind of practice that we wouldn't practice. Lashon Gnai. he's saying that where he says chulin hulanu and chalila means that we'd never do such a thing like that. That's something we'd never do. V'targumo chas la'avatecha chas me'et hakadosh baruch hu, right? And the Aramaic translation is chas, I think, is to show grace to your servants. Chas me'et hakadosh baruch hu, or maybe it means, God forbid from your servants, and God forbid, that heaven forbid. Yehi aleinu me'asot zeh, right? That we should ever do something like this. V'harbe yesh b'gemara chas v'shalom, right? So, sorry, chas in the words here means sort of heaven forbid. He says there are many examples in the Gemara where it says chas v'shalom, where this expression means heaven forbid. Okay. Hein, and now here we go. Hein kesef asher matzanu b'fi amtachotenu. Indeed, the money that we found in the mouths of our sacks. In other words, the first time around. Remember, the first time they got back and they discovered that all their money had been put in their sacks, and that just made them scared to go down again, that they could be accused of having stolen back the money. Again, trickery, right? Heshivonu elecha, we brought it back to you, me eretz Canaan, from the land of Canaan. Ve'ech nignov mi beit adonecha. How is it possible that we would now steal from the house of your Lord? Kesef was ahav, silver or gold. This, of course, is an a fortiori argument. It's saying, if we brought back the money that was put in the sack, why would we ever take anything? Why would you accuse us of actually stealing something? And there's a Rashi on this. Hein kesef, indeed the money or the silver, etc. Ze echad me asarei kalei v'chomer. He says this is one of 10 examples of a kal v'chomer, of an a fortiori argument, ha'amurim, which are stated Torah, in the Torah. The chulam minuyin beReshit Rabbah. He says they're all specified, they're all counted out in Bereshit Rabbah. We're given all 10 of these. And I was thinking to myself that the significance of there being 10 such examples, because we know that one of the ways in which oral law is derived is through these hermeneutic principles, the first of which mentioned is a kal v'chomer, meaning that even though it's not explicitly stated in the Torah, if you can infer it through these particular inferences, it's as good as written Torah. It's as good as written Torah. It has the same valency. Asher yimatze, and they're so convinced that they're innocent, right? They say this, and it's so interesting because Jacob, of course, did it with regards to Rachel. Remember when she stole the Trafim, and there is the foreshadowing in that story about what's happening here. Asher yimatze ito me'avadecha v'meit. If it is found, that which is found with one of your servants shall die. Look at what they're saying. They don't even realize it, right? V'gam anachnu niyeh la'adoni la'avadon. Not only that, we will be to our Lord as slaves, as servants. They have just put themselves, they don't realize what they've just done. And of course, this is exactly what Joseph is anticipating. And of course, they are saying, right, essentially, that it's going to be okay to put Benjamin to death, which is what they had, of course, hoped to do with Joseph until Judah stopped them. Let's see if there's any, we're going to go on. Vayomer, and he said, Gam ata kidivrechem kenhu. He says, now, just as you said, you're right. You're totally right. That is exactly the situation. Asher yimatzei ito, the one with whom the cup is found, yeli eved. So he actually says, he will be my servant, vatim tiyu nikiyim, and I'm going to consider yourselves innocent. So it's as if he's saying, even though what you're saying is justified, I'm going to be merciful. So again, ask yourself how that's likely to make them feel, right? But what's happened is he, of course, has gotten rid of the death thing, right? Let's take a look and see. Gamakat kitirehem. So he says, even though you're absolutely right. Af zo min hadin, right? Emet kedirechem. He says, even though min hadin emet kedirechem, even though he says logically it is true according to your words. Kain hu, it is in fact the case. Shekulchem chayavim badavar, that you are all guilty in this matter. Asara shenimseit neva beyad echad, right? So it says, if there are 10 people and there is an item that has been stolen that is in the hands of one of them, kulam nitpasim, they're all going to be considered accessories to the fact. Aval ani, however, as for me, lifnim mi shurat hadin. He says, but I'm going to act within, the letter of the law, meaning even though I'm not going to act according to the law, I'm going to go above and beyond. In other words, in terms of showing mercy. Asher yimatzeh ito, the one with whom it is found, yeli eved. Not only will I not put him to death, he is the one that'll be my servant. Let's find the place here. Okay. And I'll stop right here for today. Before I stop the recording, would you like any comments or questions?
Yes, I would.
Yes, Harlan.
It seems like my theory is the dream came true. They were going to bow down to Joseph. Joseph dreamed this, and God said to Joseph, God, it's all God's thing to save lives. When the famine came, they saved a hell of a lot of lives all over the world. So the dream came true, and then the only thing I couldn't understand is Joseph never called his father when he became viceroy of Egypt. Hey, Dad, I'm viceroy of Egypt. Here I am. I'm Joseph. No, he didn't call his dad living in Egypt for all those years. The same way with Jacob. He never called his dad when he was with Laban.
He didn't have a phone.
For 20 years, he never called his dad and mom either. So I don't understand the whole situation, but that's what happened. And
okay, I've got two answers for you, Harlan. One, it's a story. It's a story. Okay. The other is that if he had called his father, would he have been in a position to give his brothers a chance to show their regret?
You're right.
Do you think Jacob wouldn't have, would the brothers not have known if Jacob had known?
Yep, you're right.
So that's why. Okay.
God's thing.
As far as Jacob and Isaac, we just don't know. It's just not mentioned, but we don't know for sure that he wasn't in touch with his parents.
For 20 years? 20
we
years?
don't know. There's nothing that says that he wasn't. Okay, we just don't know. It's not part of the story. It's not a relevant part of the story. The only part that's relevant is an allusion that is made when it talks about Rebecca's nurse dying. and it talks about how Jacob took along with him Rebekah's nurse, and that is
Yeah.
actually saying that Rebekah died. It's a euphemistic way of telling him, of saying how Rebekah died, and that quite possibly he was aware of that. Jacob was aware that his mom had died before he
Joseph.
before Jacob.
Oh, Rebecca. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to stop the recording here.